Welcome to the Vernuscio Novak Report. From New York, this is Frank Vernuscio.
And from Washington, this is Daria Novak.
And Daria, the news came out this week that another California Democrat has had his staff infiltrated by, and his private life as well, infiltrated by a Chinese espionage agent. Representative Eric Swalwell of California apparently had a personal sexual affair with a woman named Fang Fang. Now, how's that for a Bond girl name for a spy movie, right? Fang Fang. And apparently she had a close personal relationship not only with Eric Swalwell, but apparently with his family as well. So this is yet another case of a California Democrat under the sway of Chinese espionage agents. You know, Daria, I'm beginning to speculate that if we look at the infiltration of Dianne Feinstein's staff, California senator, with a Chinese agent, now we're going to Eric Swalwell, you wonder if one of the reasons that California Democrats were at the forefront of the impeach Trump movement, whether it was influence from the Chinese or perhaps industries that contribute to their campaigns that are also accountable to the Chinese. You look, the two big donors in California are the tech giants, Facebook and the others, and of course, Hollywood. Now, we've talked about Hollywood on the show before, how Hollywood is really becoming part and parcel of China's outreach to the world. Hollywood has these hungry eyes looking at China's billions of people and hoping to sell popcorn and movies to the Chinese. Then we look at the Facebook giants like Facebook, the tech giants like Facebook or Google, and we all know that they have had rather close relationships with the Chinese government, sometimes just bordering on the inappropriate. Now, those two organizations, Hollywood and the tech giants, are major contributors to campaigns for California Democrats. And you must wonder, since Donald Trump was the president most prodigiously against China, China's unfair trade practices, China's aggression overseas, and its growing militancy, whether that combination of wealthy campaign donors and Chinese espionage agents really prompted people like Dianne Feinstein, Eric Swalwell, and Adam Schiff to push this impeachment narrative against Donald Trump.
You know, Frank, I think that at this point in our country's history, we need to err on the side of caution. We know that there are states that may not be officially enemy states of the United States, but they certainly are adversarial toward us, whether it's through trade or soft power issues or other areas. We know that at a minimum, China is a competitor of the United States. When we have congressmen, for instance, that are on the House Intelligence Committee, and they don't even have a clearance from the U.S. government, and we see these types of relationships like you were just mentioning in California, we have to start to question about what is really going on in this country. If there is a state that is an adversary of the U.S., we have to say that that nation state potentially could be trying to infiltrate our computer systems, our high-ranking personnel, individuals in the private sector who may have influence over government, academia. We can go through a list of those people of influence in the United States. It is only out of ignorance that, I just can't even understand, I should say, the level of ignorance that we have in Washington to think that there are not Chinese agents that are out there trying to influence U.S. policy. We know from documents that have come out of China that the Chinese laugh at us. They laugh at our levels of security, or I really should say the levels of openness that we have within our society. We've seen reports now where the Chinese have said that they have high-ranking individuals who have been inside the White House, working inside the White House, not visiting. Mm-hmm. We know that we've had spies that we've caught within the CIA, the Defense Department, and elsewhere in the U.S. government. It's ignorant if we think that whatever is happening in California, whether with Pelosi or anybody else, that all of this adds up to zero, to nothing. The Chinese have been out there with a very large number of spies now for probably about 40 years almost. I know from in the early 1980s, the FBI set up groups to start to monitor what the Chinese were doing in this country because they were making inroads from the very first days of normalization of relations. You know, Frank, we have lost not only intelligence, but we've lost industrial inventions. Advances that we used to have in artificial intelligence and AI work have been lost to China. We know that some of their military equipment very closely resembles our own. We know they reverse engineer it. It's ignorant if we think that we can just open our borders and open our books to the Chinese and not expect them to take from us.
And, you know, Daria, if we look a bit, let's go back to the Clinton administration. And you will recall during the Clinton administration, Chinese scientists were given pretty much carte blanche access to the Los Alamos laboratories, which is where our nuclear secrets, our nuclear technology is perfected. When it was pointed out, I seem to recall that Hillary Clinton didn't think it was a very big deal at all. She couldn't understand what the problem was. Of course, this was during the same decade when Johnny Chung, an intermediary for the Chinese People's Liberation Army and industries related to the Chinese People's Liberation Army, was attempting to funnel vast amounts of money to the Clinton campaign. Now, we're supposed to be gullible enough to say that, well, this is just a coincidence, allowing, for example, Chinese scientists in Los Alamos or the Clinton administration's permission to sell the Cray supercomputer to China, which was really the big blow in allowing China to allow them to catch up to our technology. This was not related to the campaign contributions. Of course, that's ridiculous. It certainly was. But this has continued, I think, unabated since the 1990s. And I think the part of the reason for the hysterical reaction, the over-the-top hatred of the Trump administration, was that many of these power brokers and industrialists and companies that want to expand into China, and these politicians that, quite frankly, are getting rich off the Chinese dime, didn't like that apple cart being upset by Donald Trump. And their hysterical reaction to him, their vehemence against him, was a product of that.
Well, I can tell you this, that I was speaking to somebody, this is many years ago, at from a foreign embassy, about espionage and acquiring computer codes and things like that from the United States. And what I was told by that person is, well, sure, of course we have spies, but we really don't have to because we can go to NTIS, which is the National Technical Information System.
Right.
We had so much information and codes. The Russians, the Chinese used to love it. Until we had Reagan in office, they used to pull things down because it was open to any researcher around the world. Now, I'm for sharing certain levels of information that will benefit mankind if it comes to, you know, food or things like that. But when you talk about sharing computer codes that allow missile systems to be more accurate, and those missile systems can be aimed at the United States, something is wrong with our system. You know, we've seen time and time again spies that have been caught here in very high level places. If we've caught a certain amount, we know that others exist that have not yet been caught. So I think that we really have to wake up and recognize that, you know, Frank, for years, you and I, through 3 administrations, I've been saying it, we can't have kumbaya politics. We can't just be out there with the flower child, with the daisy, like, you know, with the Goldwater days, if you remember the child, right, that commercial, pulling daisy leaves off and just saying, oh, it's all going to be just so lovely. You know, we have to be realistic. We may be a good nation, but not all nations are. Not all agencies in foreign governments are going to abide by the rules that we have set up, you know, for behaviors that are Western behaviors, even whether it's human rights, whether it's spy cases. I'm very concerned that with the Biden administration, assuming it takes office next month in January, that we are going to see some of this activity increase in Washington, not decrease. I think there may be additional cover-ups, and that is another area that greatly concerns me. The Trump administration came in with the goal of cleaning things up, and the job is only partially done.
Yeah, and I think the fact that that's only partially done was part of the reason why the left reacted with such vehemence to the potential of a second Trump administration. The first administration, I think the president, a Washington outsider, didn't really have the contacts or the experience, frankly, to do the job of draining the swamp that he promised the voters he would do. I think in a second Trump administration, that job could have been completed. And I think the Washington power brokers were terrified at the prospect. And I don't include just Democrats in that either, by the way. I think that certainly that Washington establishment, you know, those folks who get elected to a $140,000 job, a year job in Congress, and somehow 2 years later become out as multimillionaires. I think that apple cart was going to be upset by Donald Trump, and the reaction.
Are you paying too much for your health insurance? Are your deductibles too high? Or are you completely uninsured? If you answered yes to any of these questions, Healthcare Help Desk can help you now when people need help the most. Health insurance laws and rules have changed. If you have Obamacare, are uninsured, or your premiums are too high, call Healthcare Help Desk. It's free. New healthcare plans are available, and you may qualify for dental coverage and lower copays and deductibles. Make the free call now. Top quality coverage at the lowest prices anywhere. You may be paying too much and not even know it. In these troubled times, healthcare is more important than ever. Don't let another day go by without health insurance. Policies are being offered with very low copays and deductibles. So if you're uninsured, underinsured, or paying too much, call Healthcare Help Desk. Learn about your options before it's too late.
Call 800-964-1055. 800-964-1055.
Attention Medicare recipients and anyone turning 65. Medicare has approved new benefits not included with original Medicare and older Medicare Advantage plans. You may not be getting all of the benefits you're entitled to. These new Medicare Advantage plans may have many free new benefits including in-home aids, telephone appointments with your doctors, home-delivered meals and prescriptions. These benefits may be available and it's a free call to enroll. The easiest way to enroll is to call the Medicare Benefits Line, a free non-government service. The new plans may also offer free eyeglasses, free hearing aids, free wellness visits, and gym memberships. Call the Medicare Benefits Line now. It's easy. Find out if you're eligible for new benefits like meal and prescription delivery, in-home aids, and telemedicine. Some plans may have a $0 monthly premium or zero copays for big out-of-pocket savings.
Call 800-691-1655. 800-691-1655.
Medicare Benefits Line is not connected with or endorsed by any government agency or the federal Medicare program.
I owed the IRS $10,000.
The IRS garnished my wages.
They put a lien on my house.
I'm self-employed and didn't report all my income. They claim I owe a lot more than I do.
The IRS is the most powerful collection agency in the world. They do not give up until you pay.
I couldn't sleep. We were being audited. I called Tax Solutions Now, and a great big weight was lifted off my shoulders.
I called Tax Solutions Now, and they got the IRS off my back.
Tax Solutions Now had my wage garnishment lifted in 48 hours.
Tax Solutions Now can get you help. Our agents know the rules, can stop the pain, and get you the best deal.
Tax Solutions Now saved my business.
I qualified for the Fresh Start program. I paid less than I owed.
We connect you with a team of former IRS agents and tax professionals who get the IRS off your back. Time is running out. Call Tax Solutions Now.
Call 800-447-7570. 800-447-7570.
Reaction to a second Trump administration was so harsh that I think all the stops were pulled out in an attempt to prevent that. And I think those stops being pulled out included doing a lot of illicit things in the campaign of 2020.
When you see that Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, is being actively investigated for committing crimes. Now, the latest is tax evasion, apparently, that he's being investigated for. He himself has come out and admitted there's an active investigation. You and I and our audience know that often when they can't get you on other crimes due to lack of evidence or perhaps for national security purposes, it's so sensitive that it would be very difficult to go to court with the information. It often becomes a tax case for tax evasion. We know that Hunter Biden went over to China and brought back deals, set things up through his company, provided funding for his father. I'm sorry, but you cannot tell me that means that we are secure in the future in the White House with somebody who is going to be running the place as an American first. That really concerns me.
Yeah, it should concern every single American that basically someone whose family fortune is dependent on an enemy of the United States is now the commander-in-chief and chief executive of the United States. Daria, you and I have been in this business for a long, long time, and we don't really get surprised or disappointed at a lot. But I truly was downcast and disappointed on the revelation that Bill Barr hid the Hunter Biden investigation during this campaign. I honestly believe, and I think it is clear, that if the American public understood the extent of the investigation into Hunter Biden, it would have changed the course of this election. It was bad enough that voters tried to pick out their candidate for president, were censored out. Any news that was against Joe Biden was censored out by Facebook and Google and Twitter and by CNN and MSNBC and ABC, NBC and CBS. But for an active investigation into conduct that could potentially be considered treasonous because it involved an enemy of the United States, for that information to be hidden from the American people, I think was as unconscionable as it possibly gets. I was frankly stunned when I found out that Bill Barr hid that information from the American people.
I don't know enough about the man's motives for doing that. I don't know whether it will come out in the future, but the first impression that it gave me was that he was looking at his own self-interest first. What is his legacy going to be? And it seems like he was protecting it. I don't know if that's the truth. I don't know what pressures were put on him. I do know that there were active protests at his country home in Virginia. I know that he had received pressures and threats, but I have no idea, obviously, without having access to that type of classified information as to what was really going on. It seems to me, though, that for the overall good of the country, this should have come out, even if it was close to an election. I don't think that we can start saying that at the beginning of a person's term and at the end of a politician's term are periods where you can't act, whether it is the individual in office or somebody investigating that individual. I don't think that you just stop holding senatorial votes on appointments simply because it's near a beginning or an end of an administration. We've got to get realistic. This is really an anarchic world at the international level. The nation state is the highest organizing body. And if that is going to be the case, and we're a group of nations that are working together or working against each other, we have to prepare as the United States for a worst case scenario. And it seems to me that we haven't been doing that in recent decades in this country.
And I think that's what distinguished, I think, the Trump administration. They took a realistic, hard view at America's place in the world and the dangers that are facing it. I think when you look at a combination of what Bill Barr did or did not do, rather, in combination with the retreat of the Supreme Court. I've had a law degree since the 1970s. I'm not a practicing attorney, but I do have a law degree. And I got to tell you, the Supreme Court statement that Texas did not have standing to proceed with the case against the way the election was conducted is pure gibberish. It was an act of cowardice by the Supreme Court, and possibly the worst decision by the United States Supreme Court since their decision in the Dred Scott case in 1857. This is a black, dark mark against the court. And you have to wonder, Daria, at this point in time, now that the Supreme Court, as well as other local courts, have refused to act and even listen to pleas about the cheating and the inappropriate activities that occurred in the 2020 election, have we not opened up the door to say that cheating is no longer a punishable offense in elections? What is to prevent cheating of this scale going on in election after election? We're looking at that Georgia runoff in January coming up, right? Well, what's to prevent the Democrats from doing the exact same thing they did in the presidential election? Coming up with ballots that are pre-marked, found under a desk at 3 o'clock in the morning, throwing out Republican officials. So, where do we go from there?
You know what? We've just got to figure out what's going on in this country. Frank, we have got to be realistic. And I don't think that we have been at this point about the possibilities of election fraud. If the Democrats are not afraid of what is going on in this country, then it seems to me that we should be able to hold a recount without one side objecting. Right. I don't care whether there actually were enough votes to be able to overturn the election or not. but the integrity of our elections is so critical that what we need to be doing right now is looking at, if a particular state had a problem, can we then have a recount, whether it's 1 or 2 recounts or whatever is necessary, to get the results that are honest? You know, Frank, I don't know why the Democrats really oppose the election results at this point. When it happened in 2016, you know, they were screaming and wanted recounts. Now, all of a sudden, when it's on the other side, it's like it's something bad, it's conspiratorial, it's unnecessary.
Well, we know to some extent why, because they want to win. You know, of course, there's no morality, there's no justification for their argument, but the combination of a court in full retreat from their duties, in combination with the fact that the major media are censoring out all information that's contrary to the Democrats' position, gives them the ability to do whatever they want, however they want. You know, when we have both the media abandoning its journalistic responsibilities and the court abandoning its judicial duties, then you're seeing that it's anarchy out there. It's a jungle. Anything goes.
You know what? I know it's this time of year where everybody in the country basically is indoors. You had a lot of time from COVID. Now we've got wintertime coming up. There is a very simple but really good book that I think every American should be reading, and it's called The 5,000-Year Leap. It was Ronald Reagan's second favorite book. His first was the Bible. And he talked about this book very often, even when I spoke to him in person at different events. He would talk about this book as a way of understanding our country, understanding the Constitution, why we are unique among nations in the world. I think that we need to get back to some of these basics, Frank, where we're starting to understand once again from a civic point of view, from civic lessons that our kids are not taught today in schools, about how the system works, how the Constitution protects us. If we move away from that system, then we are going to end up having violence in this country. We are going to see a lack of peaceful transfer of power in the future. And that greatly concerns me. If we lose the electoral college, the election system in this country, if you will, we're going to be in trouble. And I don't think there's any two ways about it, that we have to get back to really reinforcing election integrity.
You know, the alternative to
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Here's why. Dish has the nation's lowest TV price, along with an award-winning DVR that can skip commercials, record 8 shows at once, and get access to thousands of movies at your fingertips. Cable simply can't even compare. So the smart choice is to cut the cable and get Dish. Plus, you get all these great TV features, free HD DVR upgrade, free installation, and free movie channels. Say goodbye to cable and get more with Dish TV. 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. As an added bonus, you can switch to Dish now and receive a $50 Visa gift card. So call now and get Dish TV. Call 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. That's 877-290-7764. Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, monthly equipment fees, and other restrictions apply. Promotion can change at any time.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America, and get this. Did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
An honest election and an honest judicial system is essentially the mob. You know, when we hear a lot of the apologists for the media, the apologists for the court, we hear them saying in many cases, well, you know, if Trump somehow overturns the election, if he investigates this, if the court decides that the election in the 4 states of Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania were done inappropriately, and those electoral votes go from Biden to Trump, well, then there's going to be riots. There's going to be civil disorder. Question, are we now depending for our court decisions and for our elections based on the will of a violent mob? If in fact that's what we have gone to, if the fear of the mob is preventing honest elections and honest court decisions, then we have lost our republic. Our republic is nothing more than a collection of people screaming in the streets. When we saw this mysterious change, did you notice, by the way, right after the election, Antifa kind of dampened down and Black Lives Matter disappeared from the streets? What this really turned out to be, for the most part, was mob pressure for the election to go a particular way. And when we hear that the court is afraid to do what it did because the mob will come back out into the streets, then we are seeing the death of a free system in this country, the death of the Constitution, the death of law and order. We are being ruled by a violent mob.
Now I want to climb back up to the 30,000-foot level for just a second, Frank, and literally talk about the whole history of our country. We're coming to the end of the year. We're going into a new administration, whether it's a Trump or a Biden one, whatever happens. I think that we have the flexibility in this country, the integrity. I think that we have the willpower in this country to move on beyond these problems. We've seen things happen in this country before in different presidential races throughout the 200 years or so, where we have had problems and we've gotten past them. So although right now I think everything looks larger than life with all the problems we have, I do think that our Constitution is divinely inspired, flexible enough, and yet strong enough to guide us through this period. I do think that in general terms, the Supreme Court, the way it is composed today, will give us the answers that we need in a sense of interpreting the Constitution in the future to protect the integrity of the country, the people, the government. I do still have great hope for what's happening. The reality is that we've ripped the Band-Aid off, and now we're seeing all the ugliness underneath that Band-Aid. The wound is open, we've got to clean it out, and then we can start the healing process. How soon that happens, I don't know. I see, unfortunately, Joe Biden talking about potential appointees for an administration in the future that look very much like an Obama third term. I don't know what that's going to mean. We may still have a rough patch, but I do want everybody out there to realize we've got elections coming up for mid-year in 2 years. Voters can make their voices heard still.
Not to be contrary, but if the precedent set in 2020 is that cheating is legitimized, or at least is a non-punishable offense, I am deeply concerned about all future elections until that is remedied. Until we decide that cheating in an election is a punishable offense, then you're not going to see another election result, and the left-wing mob will continue to win election after election, and they'll do so illicitly. It is fascinating to me that despite the staunch opposition of almost every source of major media and the censorship of the major media and the cowardice of the courts, nevertheless, 72 million Americans voted for a candidate that the violent mob didn't want, that the media didn't want, and that the courts wouldn't protect. So I think there is a wealth of knowledge in this country, a strong belief in what this country is all about, a strong adherence to the United States Constitution. You know, it was said that during the American Revolution, only 1/3 of the people were actively for independence. 1/3 were simply quiet, didn't really take any part whatsoever, and another third were for staying with the king. I think over the years, that 1/3 that was against what America was all about, all the way back going to 1775, has gotten stronger in the institutions that have their finger on the trigger of academia, the media, and unfortunately, I think the courts. Nevertheless, I think that 1/3 of true Americans who believe in the Constitution, who believe in liberty, are going to prevail eventually. But I'm not so sure it is not going to be done easily or peacefully. You know, one of the things that Joe Biden has said is that he's coming for private weapons, that he is going to knock out the Second Amendment, not on paper, but in practice. Well, I'd like to remind Joe Biden and the left, the last time a government decided to disarm the American people, decided to take away their individual liberty, it was in 1775 at Lexington and Concord, and it didn't turn out so damn well for the king and for the government at that time. If we have to have another Lexington and Concord, I think there are enough Americans out there who have had enough of the cheating by the left, of the absolute lack of morality of the Democrat Party, and of the cowardice of the courts.
Well, here's some good news. If we look at the future, we need to look at newer and younger politicians coming up. And if we do, where do we look? To the state legislatures around the country. We see that most of the governors in the country are Republican, and we see that many of the state legislatures are Republican-led. In fact, the majority of them are. So when we look at this, we are raising a new crop of politicians. But once again, I think in the past, we didn't hold our politicians that accountable. We let them go in both major Republican parties with too many things overlooked. I think now is the time when we have an opportunity to hold these younger politicians, or at least the newer ones, even if they're older by chronological age, but these newer officials accountable for their actions at the state and the local levels. If we can put people in office with integrity that understand what principled compromise is about and how we come together as Americans, not as individuals seeking their aggrandizement, their own self-interest, power for themselves or their family or money for themselves, like we see in the Biden family. If we can raise a new crop of politicians, I think there is great hope for this country because we have a system that works, a system that will hold people accountable. So I Frank, you know, maybe this today is a point counterpoint with us, but I really do believe that we have great hope for the future. You know, Ben Franklin in 1775 was crossing the Atlantic, and he wrote a beautiful poem, and he talked about the fact that he was leaving the old world for the new, and that the crossing to the new world was filled with fear, but also with great hope for the future. And I think that's where we're at once again today, whether you call it another 1770 something or not. It's the idea that we have fear that our system is going to fail us. But it also represents, I think, an opportunity for the future. As you pointed out, we saw so many individuals that came out and voted this year. If we have that level of activity going forward in the future, and if we hold our politicians accountable, especially the newer ones, I think that we can have great hope for the future.
Interestingly enough, when you point out hope in elected officials at the lower level at this point, your strategy is shared by the folks in Beijing. If you notice, one of the things that came out in the Eric Swalwell case is that Swalwell and other elected officials have been contacted or were contacted initially when they were, at the level.
Mom, thank God you're going to be okay.
So relieved. But you both should know when my time comes, I have a final expense policy with Senior Care USA.
Is Senior Care USA the life insurance policy that helps loved ones pay for funeral expenses and other debts? Bill and I called to get more information.
Yes, and there's an immediate payout of up to $50,000.
If you're over 50, call Senior Care USA now to learn more about final expense insurance plans.
There's no medical exam, even if you have a pre-existing condition like I do. When I called, the quote was free, and there was no pressure.
I found out that policies start for as little as 35 cents a day. Rates will never increase and coverage won't decrease.
I'm going to call today.
Ask about the free prescription discount card. Oh, I'm so glad you'll be taken care of.
Call 1-800-822-7419. That's 1-800-822-7419.
But is it? It's really just the beginning, right? Have you written a book and want it published but don't know where to start? You're not alone. Page Publishing cuts through the confusion that most new authors face, like copyright protection, barcodes, printing, and digital uploading. We will get your book into bookstores now. We guide you through the publishing maze and help you distribute and sell your work in hard copy and ebook formats. That's right. We will digitize and place your book for sale on Amazon, Apple iBooks, and Google, offering it to millions. Don't waste another minute. Most publishers won't even look at new author submissions, but we're different. We review your book and provide you feedback in about a week. If we decide to publish your book, your work ends and ours begins. From copy editing and proofing to typesetting and book cover art, our team gets you into bookstores fast.
Call 1-877-461-5033.
Does your current bathroom need to be updated immediately? Introducing One Day Bath and Shower Remodeling, the complete and hassle-free way to get the new bathroom of your dreams in as little as 1 day, and for as little as $1.99 a month. Yes, the experts at One Day Bath and Shower Remodeling will come to you anywhere in the country and show you all the customized options. Now you can have a brand new bathroom in as little as 1 day. Large or small bathrooms, if you want a new bathtub or shower installed, we can do it in as little as 1 day. And if you call right now, you can save $750 off your remodel. We make it easy by offering you financing as low as $199 per month. So for as little as $199 a month, you can finally have the bathroom of your dreams. Call now to schedule your free in-home consultation.
Of city council. We've heard that Fang Fang, the Chinese spy, not only slept with Swalwell when he was a mere city council person, but that she has also slept her way through a couple of mayors in the Midwest who seem to have promising political futures. You look also at Confucius Institutes at universities throughout the United States. The Chinese, I think, are making more of an effort to get into the grassroots of this country than some of our political parties are. I mean, they are really getting into first college level, then they're getting into the level of, first time elected officials, someone who looks maybe a good looking candidate, a well-spoken candidate, who they believe has a future in American politics. We are in a bitter fight for the survival of freedom in this country. And it isn't just at the level of a presidential candidate. This goes to local politicians, the city council person and so forth, who have been bought and paid for by the Chinese.
Well, I'm glad you brought up China, because what we have to look at is what threat is China, not only to the United States, but to the world. If we look at Australia, Frank, We are seeing that the Chinese have moved into Australia and they have influenced local politicians there. This is a modus operandi for the Chinese government in Beijing. We have seen them in Australia where they have actually gone and literally bought and paid for small businessmen who then go and influence local politicians. This is a move by China to remake the world in its image. And the Chinese just recently in October, toward the end of October of this year, had held their 5th plenum conference for the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing. And at that party plenum meeting, they said that they will be becoming more aggressive in the coming years, doing more overseas. And as I mentioned, I believe, Frank, on an earlier show of ours last month, that the Chinese have recognized that once they do become in the future even more aggressive outside of their own nation state, that it's going to mean more sanctions, more trade problems, and therefore they need to alter their domestic policy, turn inward when it comes to consumer products, because they know they are not going to be able to import them at the level that they have been today. And what that tells me is, unlike the West, the Chinese are working on a very, very long-term policy. We know that President Xi Jinping has talked about the fact that he wants to have China the center of the world, that he wants to eliminate Western democracies, that he wants to have influence for China in everywhere from the Arctic to the Antarctic. We've seen the Chinese become much more involved, calling themselves actually a near Arctic nation, although they're over 900 miles from the Arctic Circle, becoming involved in the Arctic Council, which is a governing body that covers the basic 8 countries that are in the Arctic region. We've seen the Chinese attempt to reduce the influence of the United States and other countries on the Arctic Council. We've also seen the Chinese use all types of technical equipment in areas in the Arctic, claiming that they're for scientific purposes. But when other scientists from nations such as the United States have asked to see that equipment, have been refused by the Chinese. There's only one reason for that. These are eavesdropping devices or some other type of equipment that really shouldn't be there. So, you know, Frank, we've got to watch things, not just inside the United States from the Chinese, but also outside. There's one other area that particularly concerns me. As you know, over this past year, we've seen where China has moved into the Mediterranean, into Eastern Europe, in areas that are right on the borders of NATO. Over the summer, the Chinese conducted military, naval, and submarine drills in the Mediterranean itself. We've seen the Chinese make inroads into the country of Georgia. Now, this is a country that's on the Russian border. The Russians went in and took over a couple of areas inside Georgia to ensure that that country would not be allowed to enter NATO. On the eastern front of that country, China has moved in and wants to use that country as a port area to access Europe. Now, we're talking about China looking at a generational type of move. This is something that's been going on now for decades. We cannot afford to be ignorant any longer. You know, when I first joined the State Department in the early 1980s, I was told by very high-ranking people at the State Department not to worry about China. There are 3 to 4 generations of technology behind us. They're not going to catch up. They're a grain importing nation. They can't feed their own country. Well, Frank, if we look at it today, what are we seeing about China? They have aircraft carriers that are capable of launching missiles. We see them involved in trade around the world. We see them literally involved in the Arctic, running submarines through that region. We are seeing China become much more aggressive in Africa with infrastructure development programs. But the Chinese don't do it the way the United States or the West does. The Chinese bring in their own companies, their own engineers, and they give loans to these developing nations. And when they give these loans to these developing nations, they come with requirements for paying the loans back. If those countries in Africa can't pay them back, the Chinese then request things like rare minerals, rare earths from the countries in Africa. And you know, Frank, these are places where there's 11, I believe, or 17 rare earths that we import for things like defense systems, communications, cell phones, laptops. These are items that we need. If the Chinese control those, they have great power over the technologies across the world. These are things that we need to be concerned about today and tomorrow.
You know, it's interesting. I know you're rapidly becoming a major scholar on NATO. And NATO just released some documents which indicate that they are refocusing the alliance to some extent. They are, of course, are going to retain their primary directive, which of course is opposing aggression by Russia. But in recent documents, Jens Stoltenberg, the head of NATO, has said that focusing on China's increased aggression right on Europe's shores is going to become a topic that NATO will begin to address. So I think that's something we have to realize is becoming a worldwide concern. China's aggression is not confined to Taiwan or parts of the Indo-Pacific. This is an aggression that is planetary wide. Indeed, one of the startling things that is rarely ever reported on the news at all is the inroads that China is making in the Caribbean and Latin America. We've spoken before how China has bases, now so-called civilian bases, but we all know what that means in the Chinese context, on both sides of the Panama Canal. We know that China has had significant port access in several Caribbean countries, as well as Cuba. Well, Cuba, of course, is not a surprise, but those other Caribbean countries are. So this is a threat that's not 3,000 miles away, that's not half a world away, that's literally on the doorstep of the United States. Just as in Europe, NATO is beginning to recognize the Chinese threat is on their doorstep as well.
NATO they define China as one of the major threats coming from the East. You know, we also have to look at not only threats by China over land, but also the sea. So we're looking at the Chinese BRI, their Belt and Road Initiative. And I do think that we do see that this administration, and in particular, Secretary of State Pompeo, recognizing some of this, and actually in recent months has been meeting with foreign governments in areas like Madagascar, different areas around the Indian Ocean, areas where China is attempting to either have basing rights or get special privileges for their Navy to be in that area. So right now, you know, we used to have Diego Garcia as the only
Attention homeowners, do you have a house that's in need of serious repairs? Do you have tenants that never seem to make their monthly payments? How about code violations, past due taxes, or maintenance costs you just can't afford? Then call my friends right now at Quick Cash Offer. They specialize in buying any home, no matter how ugly the situation. Turn that problem property into cash right now. It's just that simple. One call and you can get rid of that home headache forever. They buy the ugliest houses with instant closings, instant cash, and huge savings. Plus, there are no realtor fees, no listing fees, and no repair costs. Just cash in your hands for that painful property. They're buying a few more houses in your neighborhood this month. So take advantage of this cash offer and call Quick Cash Offer now.
855-296-8854. 855-296-8854. That's 855-296-8854.
Listen carefully. If your student loan debt is overwhelming you and things seem hopeless, we've got great news.
If you're still struggling with your student loan debt, there are government programs available that may actually lower your payments by consolidating your federal student loans. Just call us. We'll review your situation and work with you to consolidate your debt. In many cases, depending on your situation, we can lower your monthly payments in half or more. It doesn't matter how much you owe or how far behind you are. Even if you're in default, call us right now to find out how we can lower your payment in half immediately. You can stop the harassing phone calls and the wage garnishments. All you need to do is pick up the phone and call us right now. We can remove your default status, consolidate your federal student loans, lower your payments, and we can do it today. Stop worrying. This is a real solution that can help. So please call us right now.
Call 800-917-8671.
Are you over the age of 50? Want peace of mind and financial security for your family? Here's an important message to you and all seniors from the Final Expense Insurance Hotline. The average funeral costs about $7,000, even more. And the most government benefits will pay your family is only $255. That leaves your loved ones with a burden of paying your debts and funeral costs. Our plans start as low as $1 per day and will pay up to $30,000 for your funeral and other final expenses. There's no medical exam and you'll have lifetime coverage. Plus, your rates will never increase and your plan cannot be canceled regardless of your medical condition, as long as you make your premium payments. Get free information right now. Just answer a few simple questions and get approved right over the phone in just a few minutes. Call right now.
Call 855-221-7334.
Do you have an idea for an invention, but you don't know what to do next?
How do you get in front of companies or get a patent?
Call InventHelp. They've been helping inventors just like you for 35 years.
And thousands of people contact them every month.
With 65 offices, you can meet with an InventHelp representative near you who will keep your idea confidential and explain their invention process step by step. InventHelp has helped over 10,000 inventors get patents. And they offer 3D animations and prototyping services to help demonstrate your idea. InventHelp's exclusive databank includes over 9,000 companies who have agreed to confidentially review new ideas, like yours.
Don't wonder what to do next. Take action right now and get the help you need from InventHelp.
InventHelp. Call today for free information.
800-880-2937. That's 800-880-2937 now.
Place in the Indian Ocean where there was a base. We are now seeing that China has electronic capabilities to virtually listen to anything that's going on in the entire Indian Ocean. You know, if we look at trade and commerce over the seas, we see that in the Straits of Malacca, this is the area in Indonesia that basically separates the West from the South China Sea, or the Indian Ocean area, I should say, from the South China Sea. We are seeing that the Chinese are controlling more and more of these regions. There's what's known as the Air Defense Identification Zone. We're seeing China threatening this, but further and further from their shores. Now, Frank, a few decades ago when we looked at China, they could not mount an air force that could fly. Less than 50% of their planes could fly at any one time. They did not have a blue water navy, and they didn't have what was even known as a green water navy, meaning very close to their shores. They literally only had small patrol boats. If we look at it today, they have a large number of submarines. They have several aircraft carriers. They are learning to coordinate with communications, which is the next step. The various parts of their military, land, sea, and air, and space. And what we're also seeing today is they're becoming much more aggressive toward Western countries and toward Taiwan. I think all of these things are negative indicators about Chinese behavior. I would love to see China as a nation that traded with everybody, that was out there among the countries of the world, but only if it is a responsible member of a rules-based international system. And unfortunately, what we're seeing from China today is that they don't accept those norms. They don't accept the rules of the international system, which has basically kept us at a very minimal level of warfare in the world in recent years. China wants to remake that system under Chinese rules. Chinese rules don't include things like human rights, Western human rights, concepts of individuals that have free speech, freedom of travel, freedom of assembly. And I think we're starting to see this very much so in recent months in Hong Kong, for instance.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right to bring up Hong Kong, because one would have thought that if the Communist Chinese Party had the slightest indication or had the slightest intention of extending its power and influence through peaceful means, that they would have treated Hong Kong with kid gloves. And in fact, just from a purely political viewpoint, you know, I think from someone from our perspective would have said, you know what, I want to get Taiwan back into the fold of mainland China. So I'm going to treat Hong Kong so well that the people in Taiwan would say, well, why not? Why shouldn't we just have a merger with mainland China? But the oppression, the violation of international treaties as well as domestic laws that China has engaged in its harsh repression of the people of Hong Kong, is a clear indication that China doesn't even have it any place in its psychological makeup to do things the honest way, the right way. And I think one of the great fears that I've been hearing from a number of people who have studied the subject is that when a Biden administration takes over, considering the pacifist bent of the Obama Biden administration several years ago, when China invaded the offshore exclusive economic zone of the Philippines and the Obama administration didn't even lodge a diplomatic protest, that's almost a carte blanche for China to consider aggressive military action against Taiwan and perhaps others in the vicinity. I think we're in for some bumpy times ahead. You know, we spoke a bit before about NATO, and the time has probably come for the United States to consider forming a NATO-type alliance in the Indo-Pacific that would include countries such as Vietnam, obviously Australia and New Zealand, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and most importantly, India. And I think one of the reasons why we have not yet been able to form that alliance is that India famously likes to remain unaligned, even as they're being assaulted by Chinese troops on their northern border. But at some point, I think very soon, it's going to become obvious that unless a NATO-type alliance is formed in the Indo-Pacific to ring China, then I think we're in for some very difficult and very dangerous days ahead.
It's a hard thing for me to say because I enjoy much of Asia. I traveled there. The food is delicious, Frank, no matter what, you know, I can't help it. But the idea that we lose Asia, a dynamic area, a growing area, to Chinese influence, it will be devastating to the world. We're seeing even questions now in the Philippines. Long ago, we lost our basing rights in the Philippines. We're talking to them, they're recognizing it. But what we have to find out from each of these nations going forward in the coming years is how much are they willing to stand up to China? How afraid are they of China? Even Australia, a very Western country, a very independent country from China, has a lot of trade with that country, and the Chinese are already putting economic pressure on them. I think that the timeline is growing very short, that window of opportunity for the West to be able to support the nations in Asia that are not under Chinese influence right now. You know, we see Australia having problems, the Philippines, Southeast Asia. We are very close to moving into a World War II style Japanese co-prosperity sphere, but this time the influence will be coming from China. You know, if we look at Hong Kong, Frank, as an indicator of what China is planning, and we look at their military actions in the South China Sea, you and I have reported on it for a long time, the buildup of Chinese military on islands that they have actually reclaimed from the water and built up and built military-grade airstrips on them, where they have batteries for missiles on them. I mean, this is serious. If China wants to claim Asia, they are relatively close to being able to do that now. Here's another thing that we haven't talked about. I don't think at all on the show in the year 2020. If this continues in 2021 and in 2022, will Japan and South Korea and really India increase, develop, or acquire nuclear weapons? We need to be protecting South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, as friendly countries. Otherwise, we may also see something else develop, which would be a nuclear arms race, proliferation of arms in Asia. And that's not something that anyone wants to talk about. When you increase the number of countries that have a weapon system of mass destruction, you're going to see the potential for real trouble occur. I don't mean that everybody is going to blow everybody up, but we really could see a situation, for instance, along Pakistan, India, China border areas where a limited nuclear device, a tactical nuclear device is used. Now, there are strategic nuclear weapons and tactical. We have strategic nuclear weapons that are under certain agreements. not many tactical nuclear weapons agreements. These are basically weapons that are used in a particular military theater, small weapons. If we start to see this as an acceptable means of warfare, the world is really going to devolve into a really bad situation.
Interestingly, the Russians, Vladimir Putin, in a State of the Union type address,
Here's a great way to save money on your prescription medications. If you take Viagra or Cialis, we can give you a way to pay as little as $2 a pill. Compare that to prices as high as $60 per tablet. Call now with your prescription and pay as little as $2 a pill. We offer 24/7 service and always free delivery and confidential packaging. Call Pharmacy Shop 24/7 to get generic versions of Viagra or Cialis for as little as $2 a pill, plus free discreet shipping.
Broken AC, $4,600. Water heater, $1,500. Fridge on the fritz, $1,000.
You need home warranty coverage from the Home Service Club
For around $1 a day. If any of your covered appliances and systems break down, HSC will either repair or replace them.
HSC provides coverage of up to 47 different appliances and systems in your home.
I trust HSC.
HSC has over 15,000 pre-screened, highly rated technicians with the fastest response time in the industry.
They cover everything from ACs, stoves, fridges, pool pumps, and more.
Call the number on your screen now for a free no-obligation quote from a trusted HSC specialist about a home warranty for your entire home, backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call now and get 1 month free plus $75 off your first year of coverage. 1 month free and $75 off your first year. The Home Service Club.
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for dental visits. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for transportation to my doctor. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay to have my prescriptions delivered directly to my home. Did you?
These and more are important benefits some Medicare Advantage plans may give you. So if you're eligible for Medicare, call us right now because you may be eligible to enroll in a plan with amazing additional benefits. Some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for services like these: dental visits, vision coverage, hearing coverage, home delivery of drugs, even gym memberships. Some plans may include no copays for many services and 0 deductibles. Don't wait to find out if you're eligible to enroll in a plan that may include some of these wonderful benefits you deserve. Call us right now. The call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation. Make this free call now to learn if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan that may include additional benefits you want. Call us right now.
Here's a great way to save money on your prescription medications. If you take Viagra or Cialis, we can give you a way to pay as little as $2 a pill. Compare that to prices as high as $60 per tablet. Call now with your prescription and pay as little as $2 a pill. We offer 24/7 service and always free delivery and confidential packaging. Call Pharmacy Shop 24/7 to get generic versions of Viagra or Cialis for as little as $2 a pill, plus free discreet shipping.
Several years ago, basically said that the use of battlefield nuclear weapons, as he called them, is a valid endeavor, that it's a cheap way of strengthening his military, and that he saw no restraints, that he basically saw battlefield nuclear weapons the same as any other type of weapon, basically giving his armed forces the green light to go ahead and do this in the case of conflict. You know, India, of course, is already a nuclear power. Most of it geared, of course, to opposition to Pakistan rather than China, but I think that is rapidly beginning to change. The power I think we have to look at in terms of where they're going to go in the next couple of years is Japan. Japan, of course, could, if they chose to do so, become a nuclear power in about 10 minutes. And probably their missiles would come with standard white wall tires and AM/FM radio, you know. But Japan is really a bellwether of where Asia is going to go. In the past couple of weeks, we saw that the Japanese Defense Ministry has begun the development of intermediate range missiles, which could do a preemptive attack on North Korean military sites. We know, of course, that North Korea, before President Trump came to office, was shooting missiles pretty much over Japanese airspace. That ended when President Trump got into office. Now that Trump is possibly leaving office, I think the danger to Japan has become extant once again, and Japan is taking steps to protect itself. I think that, you know, there are small events in history that seem perhaps not too significant at the time, but in retrospect become of major importance. When the Obama administration failed to counter China's aggression against the Philippines, that led to the Philippines basically tossing out the American military to some extent, and it led to a lack of confidence in the world at America's resolve to do what it has to do. We're going to see something like this possibly occurring not just in the Indo-Pacific, but in the Middle East as well. The extraordinary achievements for peace, the deals between Morocco and several other countries with Israel that came about as a result of the Trump administration, we'll have to see whether that begins to evaporate. If the Biden administration, the potential Biden administration, tilts towards Iran the same way that the Obama administration did, then I think the chances for peace in the Middle East will sink through the floor. So I think the potential for massive disorder on a global scale is rapidly becoming focused into view as the Biden administration becomes more and more a strong possibility.
You know, this administration, assuming Biden takes office and puts in the people that he's indicated so far that he wants to have with him, I don't believe it's going to be a very strong one. I think it's going to be another version of the United States leading from behind. I think that we're going to see domestic issues here, not only economic ones, but also ones that include violence in this country potentially. I don't want to see violence, and I hope it doesn't occur. But I think that we see a lot of foreign money coming into this country that is supporting that. You know, a couple of months ago, we saw coming through Florida, I believe it was in Miami, very large numbers of weapons that were coming in, rifles and things. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe they were Chinese made.
Correct.
There have been, at one point, the largest city in the world that was responsible for the transshipment of Chinese weapons was actually Seattle, Washington. You know, we're seeing a lot of things that,
and we're seeing on that very note, we're also seeing a lot of financial interconnection between domestic violent groups and China. For example, if you click onto one of the Black Lives Matter sites and you go to their funding page, you find out that they're connected to a group that is dominated by China. Daria, I think we have to end it there today. Next week will be our Christmas show, and Daria and I will slide down your chimney to give you the latest news. So thank you very much for tuning in this week. We look forward to being with you again next week. To our audience, thank you.
We welcome our newest radio affiliate, Net Talk America in Washington, D.C. at 96.7 FM. We broadcast throughout the United States on radio and television and worldwide on the web. Watch us on Roku, public broadcast stations, and on the AM/FM 247.com network. You can access the program anytime on our website at usagovpolicy.com. Join us again next week. We're sponsored by the New York Analysis of Policy and Government, a division of the American Analysis of News and Media, Inc., at usagovpolicy.com, and the Institute for American Politics. Email us at truthinradio@gmail.com.
Our producer is the amazing Abigail White, and our director is the brilliant Jeff Hansen.